Good afternoon, everyone. We've got a busy day, so we got to get started here. We'll get this party started. First, I'm going to ask if there are any bill introductions today. And I'll wait just as long as I have the rest of the days. I don't see any. All right, then we're going to go ahead and get started with the budget hearing for Kansas Judicial Branch. We'll start with our fiscal analyst, Molly Pratt. Welcome to committee and please introduce yourself.
Good morning, Madam Chair, or good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Molly Pratt, and I'm a fiscal analyst with the Legislative Research Department, and I will be presenting the budget request for the judicial branch. All right. Also, I will note that the Chief Justice is in attendance, and I believe he plans to testify, as does a judge who is in charge of some of the specialty courts, which you will hear a lot about during the presentation today. All right, beginning on page 1, you will note that the judicial branch encompasses the Kansas Supreme Court, the Kansas Court of Appeals, the District Courts of Kansas, judicial and professional review boards, and staff who help with the administration of justice. The judicial branch pays for the salaries of all judges and employees, including district court clerks and the like, whereas the counties pay for all other operating expenses of the district courts. Under this funding structure, approximately 89.3% of all judicial branch expenditures went toward the salaries and wages of personnel in fiscal year 2025. The judicial branch submits its budget directly to the legislature rather than to the division of the budget. On page 2, you will find a snapshot of the agency's budget. This provides a quick overview of the main budgetary changes to the agency's request, which will be covered in more detail later. On pages 3 through 6, you will find a summary of expenditures. On page 5, the salaries and wages might stand out to you as it encompasses approximately 90.2% of the agency's budget request in fiscal year 2026. Pages 7 and 8 discuss the expenditures by program and fund. 2025 Senate Bill 125 extended the judicial branch surcharge on various docket fees through the end of fiscal year 2027. Pursuant to 2022 House Bill 2541, the surcharge on docket fees received are deposited into the State General Fund. The analysis for fiscal year 2026 begins on page 9. Item 1 discusses the previously approved amount. The agency was previously approved to expend $240.2 million, including $230.2 million in state general funds in fiscal year 2026. Item 2 explains that the judiciary carried over $5,320 in unspent SGF monies. And the committee will probably remember that the reappropriations were deleted from the SBC bill as introduced. Item 3 is on the bottom of page 9, and it details the judicial branch's learning center. During the 2025 legislative session, the agency was not approved for the $3.7 million request to create a student-focused interactive learning center within the judicial center. This past interim, the judicial branch reduced the amount requested for the Interactive Learning Center and expanded the length of time in which it will take to complete the interactive exhibits that will provide information about the history, processes, and relationships of the 3 branches of government. As such, the revised estimate includes $325,000 SGF and ongoing expenditures for the development and construction of 1 interactive learning center within the law library in fiscal year 2026. This is not considered a request for supplemental funding, as the judicial branch reduced their anticipated contractual services for the Office of Judicial Administration by the same amount to fund the Interactive Learning Center projects. Item 4 is on page 10, which details the all other adjustments within the agency's budget request. Although the amount of the judicial branch's revised estimate does not change monetarily from the previously approved amount, there are changes across categories of expenditures. For example, the judicial branch reclassified $300,000 in capital outlay expenditures as capital improvement expenditures that were previously approved for the completion of the garden level remodel of the Judicial Center in fiscal year 2026. The revised estimate also includes an increase in positions, specifically an increase of 3.5 FTE positions for a total of 2,038.5 FTE positions in fiscal year 2026. These adjustments are related to specialty court operations and a part-time position associated with the Elder Justice Innovation Grant. The request for specialty court operations positions stems from the agency's previous request to the 2025 legislature to transfer state general funds to the Specialty Court Resources Fund for specialty court operations, including personnel costs. The 2025 legislature partially approved the request, which included funding for personnel services, and transferred 1.5 million SGF to the Specialty Courts Fund. According to the agency, that original funding request did not include additional FTE positions because the Kansas Supreme Court's Specialty Court Committee needed time to decide how to expend the transferred funds. As such, the agency requested an additional 3 FTE positions in fiscal year 2026, but not the funding for the salaries and wages in order to reconcile the previously approved amount for operations and personnel costs. In its budget submission and in clarifying conversations, the judiciary indicates that these additional positions are intended to serve as a stopgap while the 2026 legislature evaluates the agency's enhancement request for permanent specialty court positions for fiscal year 2027. Madam Chair, would you like me to pause for questions or continue on to 27? Okay.
I'd like you to continue on. Thank you, Molly.
The analysis for fiscal year 2027 begins on page 11. Once again, the 2025 legislature approved $240.2 million, including $230.2 million SGF and expenditures for the judicial branch in fiscal year 2026, including funding for specialty court operations. The request increases the budget by approximately $6 million for a total of $246.1 million in fiscal year 2027. Item 2 discusses a one-time spend within the agency's budget in fiscal year 2026. Specifically, the approved budget in fiscal year 2026 includes $300,000 in one-time funding for the reconfiguration of the Judicial Center garden level. So this amount is not included in the comparison for fiscal year 2027 in order to provide a better point of comparison for the committees. Item 3 discusses the judicial branch's request for a learning center. Similar to the revised estimate in the current year, the agency requests $300,000 in SGF to further the creation and installation of one interactive learning exhibit within the Supreme Court Law Library of the Judicial Center for fiscal year 2027. Under the revised capital improvement plan, the interactive learning center would be implemented exhibit by exhibit until the judicial branch determines that the project is complete. Item 4 concerns the specialty courts funding. Previously, the 2025 legislature approved a $1.5 million transfer from the State General Fund to the Specialty Court Resources Fund for specialty court operations, including salaries and wages and other personnel costs in fiscal year 2026. The agency clarified that of the original transfer that was made on July 1st, 2025, the agency will spend approximately $650,000 in fiscal year 2026 on salaries and wages for regional court coordinator positions, operational and equipment cost, treatment subsidies, travel and training, and drug testing and ancillary services. The agency renews their request of a $1.5 million transfer from the State General Fund for specialty court operations for fiscal year 2027, or most likely this coming July 1st, 2026. Of the amount requested, $1,045,000 would go toward services requested by district judges for fiscal year 2027, including $450,000 for district court grants, $120,000 for electronic monitoring services, $20,000 for program materials and equipment, $135,000 for statewide training and technical assistance, $300,000 for drug testing subsidies, and $20,000 for printing for printed recovery materials. And a note on the district court grants, my understanding is that district courts would apply for the grants through the judicial branch. The remaining $455,000 of the request would go towards similar services for fiscal year 2028. This includes $135,000 for training and technical assistance, $300,000 for drug testing subsidies, and $20,000 for printed recovery materials. This enhancement request does not include funding for the additional FTE positions for fiscal year 2027, because that is included in item 5, the specialty court's FTE item. The additional 3 FTE positions associated with the specialty court request are included as a separate enhancement package because the agency is not requesting funding for the salaries and wages as part of the transfer that would occur on July 1st, 2026 if the legislature were to approve the request. According to the judicial branch, the agency will use funds received from the SGF transfer that occurred this past July 1st, 2025, to pay for the salaries and wages of the specialty court coordinator positions in fiscal year 2026 and for fiscal year 2027 and 2028. Thus, the agency requests an additional 3 FTE positions, but not additional funding for the salaries and wages for fiscal year 2027. The agency indicates that if this request is approved, the 3 FTE positions included in its fiscal year 2026 revised estimate as a stopgap would be removed from fiscal year 2027 so that positions are not double counted. The specialty court coordinators would do a variety of tasks, including tracking data on recidivism and coordinating meetings between specialty court judges and defendants, as well as interested parties such as therapists. And my understanding is that the coordinators would also work with local communities to develop ways to help the defendants who are using the specialty courts. Item 6 concerns the court services juvenile coordinator position. The request includes 103,296 SGF and 1 FTE position to create and fill a court services juvenile coordinator position for fiscal year 2027. The judicial branch would like a dedicated person to coordinate and field internal questions among judges and lawyers regarding juvenile justice services, in addition to assisting with gathering data related to juvenile justice. Item 7 discusses the Rural Justice Initiative. Last year, Senate Bill 214 was introduced, which would, among other provisions, create the Rural Justice Initiative for law school loan repayments for existing attorneys. As such, the agency requests $886,795 in order to implement the provisions of Senate Bill 214 should the bill be made into law. This request does not include funding for loans for students at Washburn University and the University of Kansas because the agency does not anticipate those expenditures would occur until after fiscal year 2027. Of the amount requested, the vast majority would go toward the repayment of loans of existing attorneys for fiscal year 2027. The remaining amount would go toward the salaries and wages of 1 FTE who would oversee the program, in addition to funding for printing and advertising costs, as well as outreach efforts. Item 8 discusses the agency's enhancement request for a 2.5% across-the-board increase for non-judges. Specifically, the agency requests $3.5 million in state general funds to provide the 2.5% salary increase for fiscal year 2027. The agency notes that the actual adjustments will be based on a salary study that was conducted by a third party during the 2025 interim. My understanding is that the agency does have the results of those studies, but they're still reviewing the results. Item 9 concerns hospitality language. If the committee will remember, a few years ago, the agency transitioned away from being primarily fee-funded to being primarily funded by the State General Fund. This past year, the agency experienced issues concerning using state general funds to pay for food for non-judicial staff. As such, the agency requests proviso language be included in the appropriations bill to allow such expenditures to be processed. The language requested would be based off language currently in the bill for other agencies, such as the Board of Regents. Items 10 and 11 discuss the other changes within the agency's budget request. Absent the enhancement request, the judicial branch requests an additional $1.7 million, including $2.9 million SGF for salaries and wages for fiscal year 2027. Although the overall expenditures for this category will increase, the agency estimates a decrease in employee pay due to turnover. This is offset in the entirety by an estimated increase in employer contributions to fringe benefits, including $1.5 million for judicial retirement contributions. Item 11 discusses all other adjustments, which include a decrease of $1.1 million, including about $1.1 million in SGF for all other adjustments for fiscal year 2027. This is largely due to the agency reducing the estimated amount of expenditures for software within the appellate courts and the Office of Judicial Administration. There are a variety of other changes that result in no additional monetary adjustments for fiscal year 2027, and those are detailed in the analysis. Finally, included within the agency's all other adjustments is an increase of 3.5 FTE positions for a total of 2,043.5 FTE positions for fiscal year 2027. These changes are like the ones identified in the fiscal year 2026 analysis. 0.5 FTE positions for a part-time position associated with the Elder Justice Innovation Grant, and 3 positions as a temporary stopgap for specialty court operations. The judicial branch indicates that it could not delete the positions from the budgeting system for fiscal year 2027, and that if the enhancement request for the regional specialty court coordinator positions is approved for fiscal year 2027, the 3 FTE positions identified in item 10 or item 11 would be deleted for fiscal year 2027. With that, Madam Chair, I am happy to stand open for questions.
All right, thank you, Molly. Does anyone have any questions? Representative Turk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Christmas in the Judiciary Branch. Will you do me a favor, Molly, and let me know how many open FTE positions the Judiciary Branch has?
Madam Chair, I do not have that number on me right now. If the agency does not cover it in their testimony, I will be happy to send that information to the committee tonight.
And I feel like a broken record. Just for every single future budget we hear for the rest of the session, could we please just get a list of the FTE positions that they have allotted, how many they have filled, how many are vacant, and how long they've been vacant? Thank you.
All right. Does anyone else have a question? I have a question, Molly. When they use the stopgap language, what are they basically referring to?
Madam Chair, my understanding is that during the 2024 summer, before the 2025 legislative session, the Supreme Court's committees discussed requesting the transfer to the State General Fund, or from the State General Fund to the Specialty Court Resources Fund in the amount of $3 million. At that point, the agency did not know how much money, if any, they would receive from the legislature, so they did not request any positions last year with the transfer. Over the course of this past interim, since they received the $1.5 million in funding, the agency decided to request the 3 FTE positions. My understanding is that they are currently budgeted as non-FTE positions, which also creates the reason why the agency is technically not requesting those 3 positions for fiscal year 2027, but they are requesting the 3 positions for specialty court coordinators for fiscal year 2027. Does that help answer the question?
No. Does anyone else have a question at this point? Representative Riley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Molly, quick question. 2 of their programs that they're describing that have money behind it, and I'm looking at page 7 as an example. Judicial and professional review. See that? So approved for 2026 was 300,000, or excuse me, $793,000. See that? So when I look at the document that you just handed us before session here, I don't see any outcomes, measures, goals, anything like that on that part. So says there's 3 FTEs that are working in that program. So if you look at 488, it says why we shouldn't fund this sub-program. But there's no information about what those people do. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I would defer to the agency on the performance measures for the judicial and professional review subprograms.
I know I got one, but I do not know where it is. Yes, I know, I don't just, did you take both of them? Oh, I've got it. It's underneath here. Thank you. I got it.
And Madam Chair, you'll notice on page, while you have it in front of you, page 490, the educational services, seems like they do some good work there as far as training judges and probably magistrate judges and you know, getting them certified. But when we look over here at the FTE positions, they have 0. So am I not right on that? Educational services, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 on FTEs.
Are you talking about 20? Are you talking about?
FTEs. So somebody must be cross-training or something
Okay.
that work, but they're not accrediting any FTEs for that program.
Okay. I think we need to talk to the agency, don't we? Okay. Go ahead, Molly.
Madam Chair, I have a response to Representative Turk's question about the positions. As of October 30th, per the, and I believe another analyst has a document open in front of them. But as of October 30th, the agency had filled approximately 1,934 of its 2,035 positions.
Say that number again, the first number.
1,934 positions have been filled, or of its 2,035 positions were filled as of October 30th.
Okay. Yes, Representative Turk.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and staff, could you do me a favor? As with every agency, it would help us all to see a breakdown. I'm not expecting you to have 2,035 lines of an Excel spreadsheet telling me every position, but if you could, I'm sure there's redundancies. You could lump them all in to help us understand what it is they're trying to fill, the amount of money associated to the positions, and again, seeing how long they've been vacant, all helps us immensely, especially when the agency has this many vacancies and they're asking for additional FTEs. And it's not like we just got here. Most of us on this committee have been here for a hot minute. Over the last several years, this branch has received millions in additional funds. If you see the difference between what they were even 4 years ago versus what their expenditures are now, you know, Granted, we gave them a significant amount of grace considering the cybersecurity breach that they had to get through. But now that they're now that they are on the other end of that, we need to start treating them as if they were every other agency, using the same metrics that we use to keep these in check,
I agree.
budgets in check.
I agree. And one of the things that, Jacob, you need to make a list of things that we need to make sure everyone brings to us. That Representative Turk asked for and other representatives had, so. Okay. So we can get caught up on that and we know exactly what we want. Representative Melton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a point of clarification, Molly. Those 101 vacant positions, are those representative of all 105 counties they represent?
Madam Chair, my understanding is that since the judicial branch does have employees all over the state, some of those 100 employees would be located across the state.
Representative Van Houten.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my question is on page 13, the Rural Justice Initiative. So they're asking for 700,000 in SGF funds, 103,000, some change from SGF and one FTE position. Is this because they're having problems recruiting or retaining justices in these in rural areas, or what is the purpose for that?
Madam Chair, my understanding is that the agency is concerned that there are a lack of attorneys out in Western Kansas. So the agency is trying to help convince people, yes, incentivize attorneys to move to Western Kansas. And I believe it would be similar to the nursing, the vet program at K-State, or the veterinary medicine program at K-State is how it would be structured, similar to that, or the incentive program there.
Okay. Yes, Representative Turk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Molly, using the veterinary incentive initiative or whatever you're referring to, is that in the KSU budget? Or is that in another budget? My question is why is it in the judicial branch budget and not in higher education?
Madam Chair, I can't speak to the K-State, the veterinarian medicine programs or anything, but my understanding is that the judicial branch requests the funding in order to essentially process the loan applications or the loan forgiveness applications for current attorneys.
So does another entity do that? I mean, if you're using another model, is that how it works with the veterinary model or whatever you referenced?
Madam Chair, I would defer to the agency to clarify, but in conversations with the judicial branch, when I was discussing the Rural Justice Initiative funding request, the K-State Veterinarian Loan Forgiveness Program was mentioned as a type of legislation that the Senate Bill 214 and the loan forgiveness repayments would be structured off of, or would be modeled after.
Okay. Representative Riley.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And to the other representatives' question about that, I think, Molly, that probably confused the issue of bringing the veterans repayment or the vets repayment. That was a whole different bill thought process. So I think that basically confused the issue. But I do have a question about that, and that would be, so if I've been a lawyer for 3 years in Wichita, just scratching it and barely making any money, I got this big loan. So are you saying that the judicial branch is going to pay off my loan so I will go to Overland or Bison or Bikini or Hayes for who knows what amount of time. So is this for existing lawyers or is it lawyers that are in process of graduating?
Madam Chair, I would defer to the agency to speak to the specifics of the bill. However, I do know that there are essentially two programs. One is a loan forgiveness program for current attorneys, and I would defer to the agency on the details for that, as in like where the attorneys are practicing and all of that. The second part of the bill, or the second program, would provide, I believe, tuition assistance for current law school students at Kansas universities. However, the agency is not requesting funding for that portion at this time.
All right, we'll cut you some slack here. We'll have the agency start up. Are we going to start with Mr. Chief Justice, or are you bringing it up? Can you answer all the budget questions, sir? Okay, all right.
Madam
Thank you,
Chair,
Molly.
there are also representatives of the agency who can answer more specific questions to the
Yes,
funding.
I know that. I know that. Welcome to committee. Please introduce
I
yourself,
will.
sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Eric Rosen, and I saw a lot of you last Tuesday when I had the pleasure of addressing you with the State of the Judiciary address. And thank you for your kind reception. If I would have thought in October of this last year that I would have been doing that, it came as a big
great
shift
shock.
a big shift for me, and I appreciate your warmth and hospitality last week. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to address and discuss the judicial branch's 2027 budget request. This is the first time I've appeared before the committee, and I appreciate your time to meet with me and our staff and careful attention. I can tell by the questions that you asked that you're paying to our budget. I have with me today staff from Office of Judicial Administration who can answer and track down questions. And I won't have some specifics that you had, but I will promise that we will at least try to address those questions today as much as we can and track down the answers for you in a timely fashion. I also have with me today Judge Robert Wannell from the 10th Judicial District, that's Johnson County, who will tell you about his specialty court operations. I want to start by acknowledging the legislature's support over the last several years. You've strengthened the judicial branch through salary adjustments for both judges and non-judicial employees, and you've responded to unexpected challenges that have arisen, most notably the COVID pandemic and the following cybersecurity incident that you mentioned. Because of that engagement, the courts were able to continue operating statewide, and our workforce, both in district courts and at the Office of Judicial Administration, remained supported during very challenging and difficult times. Those investments that you made have allowed the judicial branch to shift its focus to more fully serving Kansans. We've been able to expand specialty courts, help judicial districts open self-help centers, engage more deeply in rural justice issues, and address attorney shortage and convene justice partners through efforts like our second statewide mental health summit that was held this last summer at Fort Hays State University. These initiatives are public-facing, practical, and responsive to the real needs, and they are only possible because of your support. So thank you for that. I also want to recognize our local partners. Counties continue to shoulder many of the operational costs at the district court level, including supplementing specialty court operations. This collaboration is essential, and it does not go unnoticed by us. As you review our budget, it's important to keep in mind that nearly 90% of the judicial branch budget goes to salaries. Our employees are the foundation of the court system in all of our 105 counties. They are the people that can serve our constituents every day, keeping courts operating efficiently, adapting to new challenges, and ensuring access to justice. The enhancement requests before you today are focused on supporting that workforce and addressing real operational needs. I'll start with specialty courts. Last year, the legislature appropriated $1.5 million to the Specialty Court Resources Fund. That was a significant step. It was the first time specialty court received special or direct state general fund support outside of targeted funding for family treatment courts. However, the lack of consistent long-term funding remains one of the biggest challenges facing specialty courts and a major barrier for districts that want to establish them. The funding we're requesting is not intended to fully operate specialty courts. The programs are locally driven and rely on strong local partnerships. Instead of funding supplements through those efforts by covering things like equipment, training, travel, and drug testing, we are requesting $1.5 million transfer for fiscal year 2027 to continue that specific support. We are also requesting, as it was mentioned, 3 FTEs based on the recommendation from the Specialty Court Funding Advisory Committee that included 4 legislators. The committee found that the administrative workload is the major threat to sustainability. Tasks like coordinating multidisciplinary teams, data collection, writing grants, completing reports often fall on judges who are already stretched and court staff. The proposed regional coordinator positions would support multiple districts, reduce administrative burden, and improve consistency, especially in the data collection that's so important to assess the effectiveness of those courts. The committee recommends funding these positions over several years using a portion of a previously appropriated specialty fund courts. Judge Wanell is with me today, and he'll speak more directly to you about the specialty court operations and the collaborative work that happens to support participants. You asked some questions about the Rural Justice Initiative. I'll hit on that a little bit also. We request that you implement, or at least continue discussion and implement Senate Bill 214, which is currently under consideration. The bill establishes 2 programs, a rural attorney loan forgiveness program and a rural attorney training program that begins in law school and requires a 3-year rural service commitment in exchange for tuition assistance. And you mentioned the veterinary training program. It's not that it's an exact replica of that, but it's modeled after that program to establish more veterinarians in rural areas. We're thinking the same, and the Rural Justice Initiative Committee was recommended this approach to establish that program. The requested funding reflects the bill's fiscal note and includes 1 FTE at OJA to administer the programs along with outreach and other support costs. Under the attorney training program, law students would receive loans to cover law school costs. Those loans would be forgiven over time if the graduate completes law school, passes the Kansas bar, and practices full-time in rural Kansas. 1/3 of the loan would be forgiven for each year of service. The second program is a student loan repayment incentive aimed at both in-state and out-of-state attorneys. Participating attorneys could receive up to $20,000 per year for practicing in a rural county for a total of $100,000 over 5 years. This support is especially important during the early years of an attorney's practice when expenses are high and revenue is low. It helps attorneys build lasting ties to their communities. As far as the non-judicial salary increase that was mentioned, the legislature has approved cost of living increases in recent years. The judicial branch has implemented equivalent across the state, across the board increases. The adjustments have made a real difference in recruitment and retention. To remain competitive, we have engaged an independent vendor to conduct a salary study. This request represents the funding equivalent to a 2.5% across the board increase, but the distribution would be guided by the study to address the most critical market gaps. We understand that the legislature may consider employee compensation more broadly later this session, and we respectfully ask that the judicial branch non-judicial employees be included in any statewide discussion. The juvenile justice has also been a focus for both the legislature and your justice system partners. Early intervention matters, as you know, it just does. and it reduces the likelihood of deeper systemic involvement later in life. Currently, no single position at OJA is dedicated to coordinating juvenile justice efforts. This would establish a coordinator focused on juvenile-related court services, including child in need of care cases and the intermediate intervention program. The position would also support policy development, answer operational questions, and improve juvenile-specific data collection. And then finally, it was briefly mentioned about our learning center. It's part of our capital improvement request. We are seeking funding to advance the creation of a learning center within the Supreme Court Law Library. The Kansas Judicial Center hosts visitors year-round who want to understand how our courts work and how the judicial branch fits within state government. This would support a standalone exhibit that demonstrates the vision for the Learning Center and helps leverage potential donor support for future expansion. And I can tell you, over the last 20 years I've been at the court, at least 7 or 8 times a year, I host tours in the judicial branch, and this would be such a helpful tool to explain courts, how they interact with the people, and how they interact, interagency interact with the legislature and the executive branch. I know you face difficult decisions as you balance competing needs across state government. I just want to thank you for your time today, your thoughtful considerations of these requests, and your continued partnership with the judicial branch. And Madam Chair, I stand for questions if you have any, and I'll try to answer as best I can. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. And I'm not talking to you when I say we have a hugely full committee meeting today. So we're going to have to limit testimony to less than 10 minutes, more like 5 minutes. I know it's hard. I apologize, but we'll be here until kingdom comes. So I would like to make sure that we get an opportunity to go through.
Sure.
Heads of agencies get a pass on that. But other than that, we've got to keep it a little bit short. All right. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Do I have any questions for the Chief Justice? Well, you can ask him. Representative Riley.
Thanks, Chief Justice. I appreciate your overview and everything, and I am very interested, of course, from my Cali County and Sumner County and your specialty courts. We've been going a long way with Cali County with their drug courts, and now they're talking family courts. I don't know that anyone on this committee or anyone in the legislature really understands how powerful those specialty communities are. I'm sure with the presentation that'll be coming up, but for the judges, you have to have a completely different mindset when you're doing a specialty court. You're not thinking about somebody's guilty or not guilty. You are doing your best to find a way to get them out of their situation. So I really appreciate what you're doing with those specialty courts. Very important.
Thank you, Representative Wright. Yeah, that's true. I was a district court judge for 12 and a half years here in Shawnee County, and we first established a drug court late in my tenure there. And it really does require a pivot and a shift for what the district court judge usually does in presiding over cases. And I welcome Judge Wanell to discuss that a little bit, because it really is important, and they appear to be very effective, which is why we're asking for a coordinator to help assess the data, to really be able to measure and then come back and tell you, yes, they are working. And I think that's vital to continued sustainability and even modeling other types of interventions off of that information. So thank you.
All right.
Anything else?
Thank you. Thank you, sir,
Very much.
for being here.
It's nice to be here. Thank you.
We're glad you're here. All right, we're going to move on then to the Honorable Robert J. Winnell, which you were hidden from me because you were behind that desk. I'm assuming there's a man back there, but had no idea. So welcome to committee. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Rob Winnell. I'm a district court judge for the state of Kansas, 10th Judicial District in Johnson County. Madam Chair, I have prepared remarks in addition to my written testimony, but based on your comments, I will keep those in my pocket. I will address the highlights and then hopefully have a discourse and conversation and answer any questions that you may.
That will be perfect. Thank you so
So-
much for understanding.
So the highlights, I could start with the data because the data is extremely important. As stewards of taxpayer dollars, we have to look at the data. We could look at the 2% recidivism rate that our 2025 pre-adjudication juvenile drug court had in Johnson County. I can tell you about the 71 individuals I had in my assisted outpatient treatment court in 2024 that only 2 had a subsequent arrest. Or in our 9 years of having a veterans treatment court, that of the 89 graduates, only 5 have picked up new charges, 2 of which resulted in convictions. And I'd be happy to talk about that, but I want to just briefly highlight what the court is and who are the individuals that are participating in these courts. These courts are collaborative approaches between stakeholders, district attorneys, defense counsel, corrections, supervision, mental health providers, peer. Collaborative approaches for trying to reduce recidivism. Not only help individuals, but, and I tell them this, I tell everyone in my specialty courts, I don't take it personally that you don't ever want to see me again. It's mutual because that's what's the best version of their life. So these are the programs that are in place to help individuals who, to put it bluntly, are on a path to not successfully complete whatever their court requirements are. They're not going to be at their hearings, their court dates, their supervision. They're not going to make it. And that's just going to result in additional charges and in additional events in their criminal justice history. That's the program and the individuals that are there. And I want you to know every individual has met a specific gating criteria, whether it's severe mental illness or a substance abuse disorder, or from a civil commitment perspective, having a diagnosed serious mental illness and potentially a danger to themselves or others. They've met this gating criteria. So it's not just everyone, it's you meet this gating criteria and then the program works with individuals. Cali County, Judge St. Peter is an example of what's happening across the state because they are exploding, and there's some reasons for that. And I can't count the number of times that judges have reached out to me and say, hey, I'm interested in this. Not just from the 2 mental health summits that we had, but just in general conversation or when I've done on-site visits. And there is a desire for this to happen. I kind of have a passion about this and I could speak for hours, but I think I'll just stop and stand for questions because I would truly love to engage in a conversation and answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Does my committee have any questions right now for our second judge in the room? Specialty court has certainly expanded since I was a county commissioner and we had to give money to match state funds in order for, or judicial funds in order for them to start. And I do know that specialty courts have been very effective. And, but what I don't see, first of all, I'm going to tell anyone who does all these performance-based budgeting, I hate this form. Tells me nothing. I would like agencies to give me a list where it says, we have this many people, we go down to this many people, and this is how many people we believe completed successfully because they haven't been arrested. It's great to give us numbers. Do you know that all day long, all I do is hear numbers? So by the end of the day, I was dreaming about numbers last night. I can't get away from it. So what I'd really like to do is see the data. I want to see what the results are in every agency that wants a penny. Because if it's not working properly, I want to know that too. And we are charged by I am charged by the Speaker of the House. He wants $200 million cut this year. So when I see, and believe me, I think everything sounds great, but it's not easy. And in your own budget at home, you can't buy new shoes if you don't have any money in your checking account. So I would like to see absolute proof that services are working, and I'd like to see that record. So thank you.
I join in that. Madam Chair, I can give you one small piece of data and I don't know if it just adds to it, but 71 people that I had in 2024, 78% of them didn't have hospitalization or negative interaction with law enforcement. So 78%
How
of, for 2 years, we measure recidivism in 2-year period from post-graduation. So that's those percentage of individuals who were not in the justice system or in correctional housing.
Okay. I want to see it all. Representative Hubert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know who you're dealing with, but gambling addiction, I think is going to become a growing problem and challenge. I don't know specifically if you're seeing that and how you're addressing it and, what can be done, but, just my sense and what I'm hearing and the growth in Kansas, how would you respond to what we need to do?
Representative, we have lottery and gaming, and they have a huge fund on working on that. And I hope that they are working with those funds with the judicial system to get programs that work.
I'll wait for that.
Okay.
Sidebar.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but they have a lot of money. So I agree. All right. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you,
We're
Madam
gonna-
Chair, members of the
We're going to
committee.
move on and go to Matt Keenan.
Thank you. Do you happen to, did you happen to find my slides? Okay. I'm going to be 3 minutes. How's that sound?
That sounds amazing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm Matthew Keenan, I'm Executive Director of Kansas Legal Services. We helped about 23,000 Kansans last year in all 105 counties of the state. We've heard a lot about the rural justice. We're in the rural counties. We have offices all over the state. We have 11 offices, including Hayes, Dodge City, Salina. And I want to emphasize 3 points today. One, workforce development. The money that you have given us the last couple years, $200,000, has allowed us to do a number of expungement clinics throughout the state. And we need that money to be renewed. That money is not part of OJA. It has to be added into the budget. I think Representative Turk knows this. He's helped us in previous years. But you want to know statistics. Why don't you pull up, if you could pull up the 4th slide for me. I'll give you statistics about the number of people we've helped right there. 985 people through our expungement clinics, 753 cases, 98 volunteer attorneys, more than 410 cases expunged. The $1 million is an estimate because they've done studies on this. They've demonstrated that anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 a year can be additional income earned from people that have had old felonies and mistakes sealed. So we are workforce development in a state with 3% unemployment. We help working Kansans get better paying jobs, and we do it all across the state. The second point that I want to make is, I'm sorry, let me go to the next slide. We also do work with driver's license restoration. About 220,000 Kansans have suspended driver's licenses. And Representative Wassinger, in Ellis County, there's 1,172. In Sedgwick County, there's 56,000 Kansans who can't drive because they missed a court hearing. Kansas Legal Services addresses this need and gets people back on the road faster, quicker, and for free. If somebody in Kansas wants a lawyer and can find a lawyer, they're going to charge them anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000, and we do it at no charge. A couple other points and I'll be done. The evidence is for every dollar that is given to KLS returns about $7 of economic impact. So this doesn't cost the state, it pays. And you can talk to any of the judges, you can talk to the county commissioners, you can talk to people who are looking for good workers. And Kansas Legal Services coming in and putting on a clinic in their venue is a game changer. And that's what we do. That's what we do as a constituent service. 2 other points I'll make and then I'll sit down. I've emphasized that the legislature here has given us $200,000. We're asking for a renewal of that, plus, if you could go to the second slide, plus an additional $100,000. There we go. Plus $100,000 for driver's license clinics. The clinics we've done to this point was a initiative through Congress, and it has expired. So we would like to have additional funding for that. And we can do joint clinics. We can do separate clinics, but clinics are our specialty. So I'm going to conclude with this and then I'll sit down. The Russ Jennings report, which came out just a little bit ago, chaired by Bob Lewis, says this about the work that we do and the impact that we have with our expungement clinics and our driver's license clinics. This is what it says. At the conclusion of the November 7th, 2025 meeting, the committee held discussion over the content of the 2 days meetings. Following the discussion, the committee made the following recommendation, and I quote, "The committee supports Kansas Legal Services in its efforts to conduct expungement clinics and driver's license clinics and conveys that support to the House Committee on General Government Budget." So I believe that's this committee, right?
It
Okay.
most certainly is.
Okay, all right. That's all I
I'm in the
have.
wrong room. That's how I'm going to be in trouble.
All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. We appreciate your adding to this. Yes, Representative Turk.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I don't have a question, I just have a comment. I was on that committee. It was a great presentation, and if I was in charge of the judicial branch today, there would be 2 requests, not 37. It would be this and the specialty courts. I wish more budgets would stay acute, pay attention to the surroundings, the situation of the budget, and then present to us accordingly. We have quantifiable data showing that this is a successful initiative. Specialty courts, I would say, are the same. I wish we would stay acute as to not lose what is actually working in the chaos. All right, just saying that for the committee. So when we go to work this budget, let's keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Does anyone else have something they want to bring up? Representative Amix.
And I suppose this is for the branch, and I appreciate all the comments that have come forward. But is it possible that the new positions could come out of existing positions that we have available?
Welcome to committee. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Amy Deckard. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the Judicial Branch. And certainly, as has been pointed out, we do have a number of vacant positions. I would note that those positions are structured throughout the state of Kansas, so not all those positions would be currently dedicated to that particular court. We could certainly take that back and review whether or not there are any that could be repurposed. We certainly don't want to limit the activities of those district courts, as those are important opportunities. Madam Chair, I'm happy to address some of the previous questions if you would like me to. On vacant positions, as of January 12th, we do have 83.5 vacant positions. We do manage our vacant positions in order to hit our overall shrinkage rate. And I would just remind the committee that that is a salary savings that is assumed in our budget submission. So we have $9 million in salary savings that's included in that budget. To hit that amount, we will have to have vacant positions throughout the year in order to manage that target. And on the stopgap language, apologies for any confusion that might be. That's the difference between a non-FTE, more of a temporary position versus a permanent FTE. We'll endeavor to not introduce that confusion moving forward. But that's where that term came in, is the differentiation of those two. On the performance measures, we will work with KLRD. There are performance measures for that section for the judicial professional review. Those are on page 489. They got included with the district court measures. I'm happy to go through those with you and work with KLRD to get that corrected.
We would appreciate that.
Yes, those 3 individuals that you mentioned do work in attorney registration, so you'll see those bar numbers included in the district court. With your permission, I'll ask Marisa to address some of the rural attorney initiative questions.
All right. Only one person can be testifying at one time. Just telling you.
Hi, Marisa Bayless. I'm the special counsel to Chief Justice Rosen. Thank you for having me. For the Rural Justice, just some more background. So that Rural Justice Initiative was a committee that started at the end of 2024. We worked with state partners all across the state and from all disciplines, including businesses, Farm Bureau, places like that, who are really experiencing a shortage of attorneys and the effect that that can have on their community. So right now in Kansas, there's at least 2 counties that do not have a licensed attorney that live in their county. There's also many counties that while they have a licensed attorney, that attorney is the judge or it's the prosecutor, so they're not taking cases for clients. So the court recognizes that this is a ongoing problem. It's getting worse. We pulled numbers since we pulled the last numbers from 2022. We have declines of registration of attorneys continuing either to register as inactive, or a lot of them unfortunately are getting older and they don't have a partner or a younger person to pass that business on. And so that is also affecting our urban counties. Our urban counties have also lost attorney registration numbers, not at the rate that the rurals are, but they are losing those too. In the past couple of months, we have continuously been asked by Johnson County and Wichita and other urban areas to talk about rural justice because their firms are experiencing that strain. They're getting the cases and they're having attorneys having to drive and do the windshield time a lot. And so services are getting more expensive because of that. So this is an attempt, again, as Chief Justice Rosen mentioned, 2 programs. One would start in law school. That's the one that's based off of the VET program. There would be curriculum requirements in there. We are working with Washburn University and KU as an advisory committee to set up that curriculum. That curriculum would not just include like mentorships and things like that. It would also include learning how to run your own business. That's not taught in law school. So many people find
High school.
yes, many people find that a
Financial
huge
literacy.
burden.
But that's another story.
A huge burden of going out, particularly because if you're going out into a rural county, you're likely going to run your own shingle, your own business. Hiring and doing all those things can seem pretty insurmountable if you don't have that background. The other program is based on more of a traditional loan forgiveness program, as was mentioned. We are allowing anybody who would be willing to move out there. We think 5 years is a good time to hopefully put down some roots. It also allows for those border counties that we compete, or border states that we compete with, like Oklahoma, Missouri, Colorado, and Nebraska, to be potentially moving back into the state or moving to the state for opportunities. So those are just some background on those 2 programs.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Marisa,
Go ahead.
so on this Rural Justice Initiative, the Senate Bill 214, so where does that stand?
Right now, it's in Senate Ways and Means. It is a blessed bill, so it is actionable. We're hoping to take action on that bill this year. We included in our budget one more to be able to continue to keep that conversation alive on the House side. We would really like to see the passage of that bill. The funding, if it's in here or through a fiscal note or whatever, would be, through that mechanism. But Senate Bill 214 is alive. We're hoping the Senate had a hearing on it last year. So we're hoping they take action on it this year and working towards that goal.
Thank you.
I would like to bring up the fact that you guys went ahead with the Learning Center because you didn't think we knew enough and we didn't give you the money for it. So I don't really, I'm not inclined to add to that since you found funding within your own budget for it. And I think it would give you even more good feelings that you finished it yourselves. That's being kind of rude. This has been a long day, but I was, I understand what you wanted to do and you went ahead and did it. But you did it without us. And I think that should probably be continued without us. And you'll need to find money within your budget to continue that. That's a small piece of I have to tell you, I was speechless when I saw the enhancements. I know, I'm not saying you guys don't deserve it, but I look at it and I just think, as Representative Turk said, read the room, that we are being crunched and we are trying to do that. And the message I was given is no enhancements. None, just cross them all off. I don't think we'll do that with you. But I can tell you a number of enhancements does not help your cause.
I could provide maybe some background information on that. So I think in the past, if you look at our enhancement requests, they have been singularly focused on absent cybersecurity on salaries for both judges and for non-judicial employees. And the legislature has made great strides with us, and we're very thankful for that. That right now it seems we're, for non-judicial employees in particular, just trying to maintain the level and not necessarily have to build back up anything. This budget, I think, is a reflection of we can do more for the state of Kansas. And we very much understand that you are stretched very thin in your budget priorities. And that's not personal. It's just, it is what it is. And so I understand you have to make those decisions, but in our mind, that is kind of what we're looking at, is how can we do more for our constituents in our state of Kansas, not necessarily wanting just more money for the sake of it. And I know that's not, what you're saying, but
Accusing you of.
yeah, no, I know, I understand
Just a
that.
little shocking.
Yeah.
When my friends come and they have all these enhancements, I'm like, I'm gonna have to know about everything. But
We understand that.
We're gonna work on this and we appreciate your message and we appreciate what you do. And I absolutely agree with specialty courts because I see how they're doing. So perhaps the rest of the judicial system can give me some sort of measurement of what really is working within that and what's not. It makes it a little easier to fund things like that. So
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I know that we're sinful people and we all like to do bad things, but I'd like to see what kind of success you've had, as well as maybe anything else. Representative Melton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a comment about that. No disrespect intended, but just for the record, I feel like that may be your recommendation, but not all of our recommendation. We haven't all discussed it yet, so I'd like to be a record of saying that.
And I apologize if I made it sound like it was everyone's. It is I'm working on my charge. I'm working on with what my boss told me to do. So that's what the message I have to give. So, all right. Thank you, Marisa. I appreciate it. Thank you to the judicial system. I'm sorry that I didn't make everything really happy and smiley. All right. We will move on. Unless you have anything else you want to say, any of you? Would you just like to get out of here so I don't say anything more? We'll move to the office of the governor. So. We'll start with our fiscal analyst, Ariana. Welcome to committee. Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Committee. My name is Ariana Waddell, and I'll be presenting the budget for the Office of the Governor. And I'm going to note that the Chief of Staff, Mr. Will Lawrence, will be also providing testimony. In addition, the Children Advocacy Centers of Kansas and their membership association will also be presenting. Okay. Before I start, I'm going to note that you have several pieces of paper in front of you. One of the long sheets is the performance-based budget. There's also another long sheet that shows the difference between the agency requests and the SBC, the Special Budget Committee. I'm going to note that there was a global motion to delete the the reappropriations. So there was a deletion about 2.5 million for reappropriations. Also, you should have a yellow sheet in front of you that shows the comparison between the SBC and the governor recommendations. And I want to note that the governor recommended adding the reappropriations. And additionally, there was an item to add 102 SGF for one-time supplemental appropriations to finance the new executive director of the Office of Early Childhood in FY 2026. And that the Office of Early Childhood that was authorized by HB 2045 was passed by the legislation last year. Okay, if you turn your attention to the budget summary, the Office of the Governor's 2026 revised estimate totals 62 million in all funds, which represents less than 1% of the statewide total expenditure. SGF expenditure for FY 2026 is requested as 37.3 million, and that's less than 1% of the statewide totals. And if you turn your attention to page 2, that shows the budget and policy snapshot. Page 3, that shows the summary by expenditures, the 10-year history. On page 5, we have a breakdown of the expenditures by category. I'm going to note that about 82% of the agency's budget is in state aid and assistance for FY 2026, with that associated with the grant office. If you turn your attention to page 7, which shows the expenditure by program. Page 9, there's the fee fund analysis for the crime victim assistance fund. And we also have the ending balance as well for that fund. I will jump to the FY 2026 analysis. If you could please turn your attention to page 10. Once again, the FY 26 approved budget for the Office of the Governor, including reappropriations, totals about 62.1 million with 57.6 FTE positions. And this includes about 37.7 million from the State General Fund, about 4.6 million for ARPA state relief funds, and about nearly 19.8 million for all other funds. The agency revised estimate reflects a net decrease of about $138,000, and this is driven by reductions in salary and wages and other adjustments, and partially offset by increases in other assistance aids to locals and contractual service, along with there's a net reduction of 2 FTE positions. Okay, for item 1, it shows the approved budget that was passed by the legislature, the SB 125, and that includes the federal grants office, where 3.3 million in federal funds were deleted and 1 FTE was added for operations and a grants program specialist, and Child Advocacy Center grants were maintained with additional 344 SGF. There's the domestic violence prevention grants received 1 million SGF. There was also the 2025 pay plan and also a 1.5 SGF lapse. Okay. And also there was language about regarding travel language requiring disclosure of any reimbursed travel by the governor or lieutenant governor. If you please turn your attention to page 11, it notes the SGF reappropriations. There are about 2.5 million in unspent SGF from FY 2025 to FY 2026, and about 67% of these funds, are roughly 1.7, are allocated to grants for the domestic violence prevention, child advocacy centers, and court-appointed special advocates, or CASA, with the remainder supporting the agency operations. And for item 3, I'm going to note that the 1.5% lapse in SGF reappropriations, that comes out to about $12,000. for item 4 is the other assistance. There's about 2.1 million increase in other assistance that's primarily tied to the grants office, including 1.7 million SGF reappropriations. These funds support grants for the Domestic Violence Prevention Fund, Child Advocacy Centers, and CASA programs. There was also grant increases for the Family Violence Prevention and Services Grant and Sexual Assault Services Grant Program. Item 5 shows the aid to locals, which also increases related to the grants office, which an increase of about $417,000 in federal funds. And adjustments reflect changes in programs, including the Edward J. Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant and the Stop Violence Against Women Grant. Item number 6, there was an increase in contractual services, about $283,000, and this is mostly associated with the Office of Recovery. And there was reclassification between the capital outlay expenditure and to a contractual service expenditures, about $250,000, about $250,000, and there was also some changes related to the federal grant office for professional services to support new grants portal, the federal Kansas implementation plan, evaluation of the state crisis intervention program sub-grants. And these increases were partially offset by about $75,000 in reduced contractual service fees. On page 12, once again, is the capital outlay. There was a decrease of about $255,000. And once again, that's tied to reclassification of expenditure from a capital outlay to contractual service expenditure. For item 8, the salary and wages, there's a decrease of about $242,000, and the Office of Recovery are seeing reductions due to ongoing winding down operations. There's also lower pay and benefits. The Federal Grants Office sees a decrease of about $74,000, including a part-time replacement for a full-time employee. In contrast, the Office of Governor has increase in salary and benefits. For item 9, it notes the all other adjustments, which is about $2.5 million, and this reflects, I'm sorry, $2.4 million, and this reflects more like a technical adjustments between the approved and the revised estimates for the reappropriations. That's primarily what that reflects. And if you could turn your attention to page 13, to the fiscal 2027 analysis. Once again, the fiscal 2026 approved budget without reappropriations for the Office of the Governor totals about $59.7 million with 57.6 FTE positions. And this includes approximately $35.3 million from state general funds. And the agency requests reflects a decrease of about $919,000 in all funds, including an increase of about $410,000 in SGF. And there's also once again, a reduction of, or a net decrease of about 2 FTE positions. Okay. For the agency changes, once again, item number 1 is other assistance. There's about a decrease of roughly $816,000 in other assistance, and that's funding administered by the grants office. For item 2, there's capital outlay, similar adjustment to FY 2026 with contractual services and capital outlay for the reclassification. Item number 4, there is a decrease of about $49,000 in aids to local. That's funding for like the federal John R. Justice Student Loan Repayment Program and JAG funds partially. And this is partially offset by increases in STOP and other funding, but that's once again a reduction about $49,000 in aids to local. There's also a decrease in salary wages for FY 2027, about a decrease about $128,000. And again, that's partly related to the winding down of the Office of Recovery. And there are adjustments also in the federal grants office as well. And those decreases are partially offset by increases in the Office of the Governor. And for all other adjustments, that primarily reflects another, I guess, a technical adjustment. The approved budget had the 1.5% adjustment, or the operating adjustments, and the FY 2027 agency request does not include that. So that primarily reflects technical adjustments there. Any questions, Madam Chairwoman?
Does the committee have any questions for Ariana? Well done, thank you. And I'll call up Mr. Will Lawrence to the podium. Welcome to committee. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Will Lawrence, Governor Kelly's Chief of Staff. It's hard to believe that this is my 8th and final time appearing before this committee on the Governor's Office budget, and I appreciate the chance to appear. Bottom line up front on our budget, we are not requesting any additional FTEs. I was prepared to say we're not requesting any enhancements. I did catch the analyst make a mention in the governor's recommendation in her budget, and I'll address that in a minute in the Office of Early Childhood, and I have a way of maybe resolving that issue. First and foremost, I think as this committee has seen over the years, it's been kind of an interesting budget with the development of the Office Recovery and all the ARPA money that's flown through. I think we're getting to the point in our budget where you can start to see it stabilize as we're getting to the end of that process. So all of the ARPA money has to be spent by the end of this calendar year. There will be some compliance work that has to be done at the conclusion of that, but I do think that with the new administration coming in, they will have the opportunity to probably wrap up all that work at the conclusion of FY 27, and a lot of that compliance work can probably go into Department of Administration. So I think we're about at the end of the Office of Recovery, which I think will be nice. And I do think we had a couple FTEs that were deleted from that office for FY 27, if I remember correctly. In relation to the reappropriations, I wanted to address that because that is the only request that I have for this committee. Of the $2.5 million that was lapsed as reappropriations, approximately $1.7 million of that are funds that are in the governor's grants office related to VOCA, the Child Advocacy Centers, and CASA. The reason for that is simply timing of when this money goes out the door. I believe at this point in time, most, if not all of that money has been allocated at this point in time. It's certainly earmarked, and the local entities are relying on these funds. So we would like to see that restored as part of this. The other approximately $800,000 of the reappropriation is in the Office of the Governor budget, which is, kind of my central staff budget. We over the years have had kind of an incremental reappropriation that's been building just as I've tried to stay under our budget. And so in FY 25, that number was $367,000. That was kind of a cumulative continuing rollover that had not been swept. In FY 26, that rollover was, I'm forgetting my numbers here, 441,000, I think, or approximately there. And so that's what totaled the 800,000. These planned reappropriations we have been using, and I highlight that in my testimony in 2 places. One is in the Office of Early Childhood that's in the works of being put together and comes online officially in FY 27. So there's been a contractor that came on to help with putting all this together, and that was $206,000, I think, dollars. And then the other 102 of the 308 that I have in my testimony is the salary for the executive director. What I just caught is, and this is where I probably should have done a little more homework on the governor's budget, and I'm a little bit different than her. I was not aware we were asking for the enhancement for that, so I think you could do one of two things here. If you just do the $308,200 in restoring the lapse, that would cover the $102,000 that is the supplemental enhancement that the governor made. It's the same thing. So you could do one or the other to solve that issue for me, because I've been covering that out of our budget, out of those extra funds. So that's an unbudgeted item for us. The other unbudgeted item is the governor's military council. This was established by executive order under Governor Sebelius, and is carried forward through Governor Brownback and Governor Kelly. The executive director, General Perry Wiggins, was hired by Governor Brownback. He's seen this kind of through the process. His salary when we came in was covered by Go Topeka, which was a little bit of a weird arrangement that ultimately resulted in us moving it to the Department of Commerce, where it was a fine place, but ultimately in talking with General Wiggins and thinking about the future of the military council, the thought was to codify this in statute, and there's legislation that I don't think has been introduced yet, but the military council is working with Representative Croft to get that introduced, and that would then house the executive director's salary. So that $142,000 right now is being paid out of the governor's office. So those numbers together is the $450,000 that I would say to you that I would definitely need just to get through those unbudgeted expenses. I am asking for an additional 50,000, and the only reason for that is, so FY '27 will be the year that we split the budget with whoever is the governor-elect. And so you will have a transition budget that will cover their work from election day, or I guess the day after the election, until inauguration. Once the inauguration happens, you no longer have access to that transition budget, so you're then officially on the governor's office budget. So what I've been trying to do as part of all of the reappropriations is have some level of a cushion for whoever comes in, so that way, it's hard to, you don't have just like you get 6 months, you get 6 months. It's kind of a, we're on the better side of it because we don't have to deal with the end of the fiscal year. But I want to make sure that whoever comes in can hire the staff that they need day one to do those things. So if you don't want to do the 50,000, I can live without that. I suspect that we will have some attrition over the course of this year as staff start to find other jobs and things like that. So at the end of the day, in full transparency, if you don't want to give me the 50,000, I can live without that. But that would be nice to have just to make sure I have a cushion in case there is anything unexpected. And with that, Madam Chair, I am happy to stand for any questions.
All right. Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Lawrence? Representative Turk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, actually, this is for staff. Just for my own understanding, if we were to provide that $50,000 and he didn't end up spending it, it would roll over to the next fiscal year as a reappropriation for which we could take back, correct? It would just be the next year's reappropriation. So the incoming administration would come to the budget with that, and it would be likely struck by the SBC, and we would be able to take back that reappropriation if he didn't end up using it. Do I
Madam
understand that?
Chairman and Representative Turk, I think the peanut of yours is if
Wait a
they.
minute, who are you? Okay, for people on WebEx, sorry.
I am so sorry. Jill Walters with the Reviser of Statutes Office. I'm subbing in for Jesse Pringle, who usually staffs your committee. Certainly, thank you and excuse me for not introducing myself, Madam Chairman.
You're new.
Yes, I know. Madam Chairman and Representative Turk, I think the point is if they don't use the money, yes, it would lapse. But if there wouldn't be anything in there, you wouldn't be able to lapse anything. But if they didn't expend it, then yeah, the 50,000 should be in there and it could be lapsed.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, that answered my question. I just wanted to make sure, just so that for the committee, like it's not like we're sitting here wasting money. I mean, it's a courtesy. That's all I'm saying. And if he doesn't end up needing it, we get it back. 50 grand.
Okay. All right. I don't see any more questions right now. You must have done a good
Chair.
job. Go ahead and sit down and we'll move on to Michelle McCormick, Executive Director of the Kansas Coalition Against Sexual and Domestic Violence. Welcome to committee. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Michelle McCormick, I'm the Executive Director of the Kansas Coalition Against Sexual and Domestic Violence. You have my written testimony there, and so I'm just going to hit the highlights. Also, I will point out that you have the written testimony of 3 of our 25 member programs, and so encourage you to check that out. They have really compelling testimony about the critical nature of the services they provide. They are the agencies, of course, who are providing direct services to victims and survivors of domestic and sexual violence in our state. And we're deeply grateful to the legislature for the support that you've provided to our programs. And we're here to basically just ask for your full support for the amount of funding that was written into the House bill. And then also we would support Mr. Lawrence's recommendation about the reappropriation. I really wanted to just highlight that in many ways, the services that are provided by the victim advocates in our state are really akin to first responders. They provide support services at the time that folks experience acute crisis, but also many of those services are provided in the long term as well. And so the agencies are providing counseling or support groups and some of those direct services in order to help folks recover and really heal from the terrible experiences that they have had. In this last year, I think there's been a lot of recognition about how tragically the worst case scenarios can come true in these situations. You may have seen in 2025 that 3 of the 4 law enforcement officers who were killed in the line of duty were responding to domestic violence cases. And in the last 5 years in our state, on average, around 30 victims have died due to domestic violence homicides. And our programs serve around 70,000 survivors each year as well. And so as was mentioned earlier, you know, these are not just numbers, right? These aren't statistics. These are real people. And 20 years ago, my sister was killed due to domestic violence. And so I can attest to personally how the ripple effects can affect folks even when just one life is lost. So I think it's to the benefit of all of our communities that these services are supported and that hopefully we could intervene prior to the point of these tragic escalations. I've listed in my written testimony just some bullet points of what specific services our agencies provide to people and that they use this funding for. And so I will skip reading you those bullet points. But also, so I'll just conclude by saying I believe that when survivors are connected to our programs, that they see a different path forward, that they have hope. I think that when professionals are trained to better serve victims, that they're more likely to reach out for help and participate in the systems that we've created to support them. And so when these services are supported, Kansas communities are safer. And so I just thank you for your continued support and would be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you very much. My apologies for losing your sister. That's going to be hard. I'm going to toot my horn a little bit. We had a domestic violence murder in Hayes, and we were able to change probate law to keep that person from using his wife's money to represent him in court. So I understand. So thank you. Are there any questions for Michelle? Okay, we'll just move on to Casey. Welcome to committee. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I am Casey Dahlke, CEO for Children's Advocacy Centers of Kansas. We are the state association that provides that support technical assistance to our 19 child advocacy centers across the state. Children's advocacy centers exist to ensure that when a child discloses abuse, there is a coordinated response that is timely and centered on the child. Last year alone, Kansas CAC saw 4,316 children and provided 6,892 services, reflecting a 13.9% increase statewide. This increase is real, it's sustained, and it's happening across both rural and urban parts of Kansas. Starting July 1st, 2025, Kansas enacted House Bill 2075, which strengthened law enforcement referrals and also made DCF response time within 24 hours, including weekends and holidays. What that has done, and since implementation, CACs have seen significant increase in services as DCF and law enforcement are our primary referral partners. We have that measurable increase of referrals statewide. And here's our primary concern for this year that I bring before you. When systems move faster without that support, children wait. They wait for forensic interviews, they wait for advocates, they wait for help at the most critical time, which is right after the disclosure of their abuse. And research does show and tell us that delays after that disclosure of abuse can worsen symptoms, both mental and physical symptoms down the line, and that lifelong impact that we do see. Research also shows that the $295,000 per case is that lifetime impact cost when children are not exposed to that early intervention. And the cost, the lifetime cost is not avoided when early intervention is not in place. It's just simply shifted downstream to our foster care systems, to our emergency systems, and then to the justice system as well. Children's advocacy centers are one of the few models proven to intervene early and efficiently in investigations and save 36% of the cost of traditional investigations. For these reasons, this year, we are respectfully requesting an additional $2.7 million added to this Child Advocacy Center's state government budget line item, not to create something new, not to try something different, but to simply continue on a system that we know works. And I hear the concern and the pressure that this committee and the legislature is under when it comes time to discuss budgets. And I certainly don't take that lightly when I make this ask to you all. And I wish I could stand before you, and I hope someday to be able to do that and say that child abuse is on the decline, that we don't need additional support, that we have somehow started to solve this issue, but unfortunately that is just not our reality. And we know that every child in Kansas deserves timely, coordinated, trauma-informed response, regardless of what their zip code is and where they live throughout the state. And I want to thank you for your leadership and commitment to protecting Kansas children alongside with us, and I'm happy to stand for questions at the appropriate time.
All right, thank you, Casey. Representative Amix?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You have a line in your testimony that without the investment, Kansas risks undermining the effectiveness of a system that is otherwise working as intended.
Yes.
So without the funding, what happens to the program?
Yeah, well, it depends on the program. We have two programs currently that, without additional funding to State General Fund, will close their doors June of this year. That would be in Ottawa, Kansas, and Lyons, Kansas, Rice County, and Franklin County. In addition to that, to those two sites closing their doors, leaving those children in those communities unserved, longer response times for children and families, which also in my testimony, you will see that lack of early intervention support at the time of disclosure, costs down the line increase, but so does the human cost along with the financial.
Yes, go ahead.
So Casey, if I understand this right, you close those two offices, people got to travel somewhere, right?
That's correct. In hopes that they actually have the financial means and the physical means of a vehicle to commute across those rural parts of Kansas to get to their appointments.
Thank you, Madam.
All right, thank you. I don't see any other hands up, so thank you for being here, Casey. We appreciate your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
We'll move on to Judy Rodman from Sunflower House. Welcome to committee. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm a little short.
Yep, just pull it down.
Hello, everyone. My name is Judy Rodman. I am the president and CEO of Sunflower House. So thank you, Madam Chair and committee, for allowing me to be here today. So I want to talk a little bit about our services, and I know you have my written testimony in front of you. Over the past 2 years, I'm going to start with, we have 3 main programs at Sunflower House. We have our prevention education program, we have our intervention program, which is forensic interviews and family advocacy, and then we have our treatment program for therapy services. So over the past 2 years, our prevention education program has grown by 152%. Now, I want to thank, we are very fortunate to have District Attorney Steve Howe and District Attorney Mark Dupree that sit on our board and help advocate for our partnerships. So they have helped us to build strong relationships with our public schools in our area. And so I am proud to say that every public school in Johnson and Wyandotte County have signed memorandums of understanding with Sunflower House, allowing us permission to come into their schools and provide prevention education to students. Some of the schools have even gone as far as to write us into their curriculum to ensure that all students receive that education. So in 2025, we served 48,500 children and adults in our prevention education program. If we were to serve every child and adult related to the school system, the expectation would be able to serve 130,000 individuals. Through that partnership with our local schools, something really wonderful occurred this last year. What we heard from our district attorney's office was that there were some struggles with Title IX investigations involving allegations of school staff members with allegations against students. So what we did is we pulled together our superintendents, their legal departments, the district attorney's office, DCF, and local law enforcement. And we had hard conversations about how could we come to the table and help. So what we have done is we wrote an addendum to our protocol on how to respond to child abuse to include helping the school districts with Title IX investigations. So any investigation that involves a staff member or a peer-on-peer sexual assault that takes place at school or at a school-sponsored event, they will put a pause on their investigation, report to law enforcement. That child will be referred to Sunflower House for forensic interview, family advocacy, and for therapy services. So with that, I want to say that we are very excited to share that Sunflower House is proud to announce that our education program has been approved by our accrediting body, National Children's Alliance. So we are one of 4 CACs within the nation to have our self-developed program be endorsed by NCA. Part of our goal is to take what we have learned through building these partnerships with our local schools and our education programs and to be able to share it with our other CAC partners across the state. One of the things that is in my written testimony is you'll see, according to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the sexual exploitation of children increased 198% in this last year, with the target being adolescent boys. Their research shows that from the time an adolescent boy is asked for an explicit picture to the time they send it is 28 seconds. And that's why this education is so important, not only for the kids to know what to look for and how to keep themselves safe online, but for adults to know how to protect kids. With technology and AI changing so quickly, one of the things we're proud about our program is we continually work with law enforcement and members of FBI to make sure we are updating our programming throughout the year to make sure that we are addressing these needs as they come ahead. I'm also proud to say that through this collaboration, we have also started a task force to address child sexual abuse materials and the sexual exploitation of children, a CSAM-CSEC task force that is addressing things like AI-generated pornography and how we're going to address that in our community. So we're very happy that we are able to do that. Now, through all of this expansion of prevention education, we have seen something that has not been seen before in Sunflower House, and that is we have had a 30% increase in our forensic interviews this year. So what that tells me is by training kids and adults on how to recognize, respond, and report abuse, more kids are coming in for services. So we're getting that early identification and early intervention that kids need to get back on track to live the life that they're supposed to be leading. And so in 2025, our child assessment team that provides forensic interviews and family advocacy services, served 974 individuals through that program. And so I want to thank you all for supporting us. With the funding cuts to VOCA, we would not have been able to move forward in this growth and this expansion without the help from you. And so we just want to share our appreciation, and I am willing to stand for questions.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? Thank you. I
Thank you.
appreciate that. Now we'll hear from Diana Shun. Is that correct? Okay. CEO of Child Advocacy Center of Sedgwick County. Please welcome to committee and please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Diana Shun. I am the CEO for the Child Advocacy Center of Sedgwick County, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share with you how CAC funds impact the children that we serve. We have the opportunity to work with more than 2,000 child abuse victims and their caregivers each year. Like many other child advocacy centers, we provide advocacy, therapy, case coordination, and community education. In our CAC, nearly 80% of the children served have experienced or have a concern for having experienced sexual abuse. As you can imagine, this type of trauma is difficult for children to process, and the need for immediate mental health support is critical to the success of a child incorporating this trauma into their lives in the most positive way possible. I'm going to focus my testimony on therapy services offered by our Child Advocacy Center. Currently, we have several therapy positions open. 5 of our 7 positions are open. This is as a result of a variety of reasons, but one primary reason is the difficulty in paying competitive wages. The CAC grant funding we are discussing today is greatly appreciated, but to adequately serve the needs of our clients and to decrease the wait times for our children to receive therapy services, we are certainly in support of the requested $2.7 million increase. Because of being short-staffed, we refer many of our clients into the community for mental health services. It is not uncommon for our children who have received a referral into the community to wait 1 to 3 months or more for services for this trauma treatment. Since all of our services are free of charge at the Child Advocacy Center, we focus on children and families who can't pay for therapy services, but many more will struggle to do so when we refer them into the community. The CAC funding comprises 32% of our total $2.7 million budget at the CAC in Sedgwick County. About 26% of our budget comes from grants, fundraising, and donations. We are consistently looking for donors in a variety of ways to engage in the public. As you can imagine, child abuse can be a difficult topic to address, unless you know someone who may have been impacted by it. Your support of CACs is greatly appreciated, and I encourage you to help support the essential services in our communities that are needed to be able to continue to invest in our direct client services to our victims. Thank you so much for your time and consideration, and I'm happy to stand for questions as appropriate.
Thank you very much, Bryn. Or no, you're not Bryn. You're Diana. I'm
Diana,
sorry.
correct.
I'm losing track.
It's a long day.
It has been. I don't see any questions. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Now we will go to Bryn. Sorry, I'm trying to take away your identity.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Bryn Murphy. I am the CEO of Sunlight Children's Services. Sunlight Children's Services is a nonprofit dedicated to children who have experienced abuse. Since 2004, we have primarily served the 13th Judicial District of Butler, Greenwood, and Elk counties, while also supporting children and systems across Kansas. We do this through 2 core programs. First, our Child Advocacy Center. We work with 20 community partners, including law enforcement, child protective services, prosecution, medical providers, mental health professionals, to provide forensic interviews, advocacy, and trauma-informed mental health services in a child-friendly setting. 5 years ago, we hired our first therapist, and today we employ 5 clinicians who provided 3,300 therapeutic services last year alone. Since opening in 2007, our CAC has conducted over 4,400 forensic interviews of children who have reported abuse. These numbers reflect both the trust placed in our center and the growing demand for timely, coordinated response to child abuse. In 2014, we opened Sunlight Children's Home, a 15-bed emergency shelter for kids ages 0 to 18. We initially planned on serving about 200 kids from our local communities each year, and at the end of '25, we've provided care to over 6,000 kids across 85 Kansas counties. We also serve youth who are in foster care, providing emergency placements for them when they don't have a safe place to go. Across Kansas and nationwide, CACs are not just seeing an increase in referrals, but also more complex cases. Children are presenting with layered trauma, higher mental health services, family instability, and ongoing court involvement. These cases require wraparound services of advocacy, forensic interviews, therapy, and family support, all working together. At Sunlight, this complexity has highlighted the need for us to bring our services together. Currently, our CAC is in El Dorado, and our children's home is in Andover, a 20-minute difference. That separation creates a barrier for children in crisis who may need advocacy, forensic interview, crisis therapy, and placement coordination all at the same time. Consolidating our services through a capital campaign will allow children to access these services seamlessly. It will increase our emergency capacity for placements, improve coordination for children in police protective custody, and ensure timely access to forensic interviews, medical services, and mental health care, often before an emergency court hearing even happens. That support can make a meaningful difference for the outcome of a child's future. We have already seen the impact of these services being provided early. We provide advocacy services to children placed in our children's home from our local communities before a formal CAC referral is even made. Early intervention can be the difference between stabilization or future trauma. Helping families access support quickly and when safe, reducing the need for longer-term out-of-home placements for these children. CACs are critical for the infrastructure of Kansas child welfare systems and public safety. They reduce trauma for children, improve investigative outcomes, and strengthen the overall response for families. But these outcomes depend on increasing in funding. For these reasons, we strongly encourage you to consider adding the $2.7 million to the overall recommended budget for CACs. This funding allows CACs to keep pace with increasing demands, retain qualified professionals to provide the care to the youth that we're seeing, and continue to provide timely trauma-informed mental health services. This isn't an expansion just for expansion's sakes. It's an investment to ensure that all Kansas children can receive coordinated, compassionate care when they need it the most. Thank you for your time and commitment to Kansas kids. I'll stand for questions when appropriate.
All right. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Does anyone have any questions of any of the conferees? Okay. Representative?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say something. Today in our Child Welfare and Foster Care Committee, we heard the Child Death Review Board report. And it just is sickening to hear the stories about children being killed through domestic violence. So what these guys here do, these women that gave testimony, it's so important for prevention and these early services and treatment to prevent the child deaths. And as a nurse, I've seen some of this stuff. It is just appalling. And if we don't put our dollars in these kind of services, nothing else really matters. I mean, our youth are our future. So that's all I just want to say. But think about this for when we work this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. I appreciate that. Yes, Representative Melton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd also like to say thank you guys as a relative of a fallen officer. Wasn't domestic violence related, but the sheriff's deputy in Wyandotte County, it was. And I think that that's often overlooked that when our public safety goes to answer these calls, they're putting themselves in harm's way too. So thank you for recognizing that.
Thank you, Representative. All right. Well, before we adjourn the committee today, I want to inform committee members that we will have committee on Friday, but it will be at 9 a.m. We're not supposed to have snow south of us until in the evening, so we can stay ahead of our schedule, stay on schedule and not get behind. If someone feels like they're afraid or has a problem, please let me know. We understand, but we would like to try to keep this party going and try to get as much done as we can. We are on a short timeline. So is there anything else for the good of the committee? Pardon me? Representative Amix?
I just had concern about my 20-minute drive.
Well, we're really worried about your 20-minute drive. All right. Well, thanks. A little bit of levity after a very heartfelt testimony. So thank you, everyone. Committee is adjourned.